Hello, fourth graders. Hope you're all doing well, staying healthy. It's been a while since we talked. I just wanted to check in and see how everybody's doing. You might ask, Mr. Krieger, where are you and what are you wearing? Well, I am in the Brillion Wildlife Area, or some people call it the Brillion Marsh. What I'm doing back here is I'm checking out one of our local biomes, and that's one of our next science units that we were supposed to be doing, but unfortunately it looks like we will not be able to do that. So I'm going to bring that biome to you. There's all different types of biomes that we'll be learning about. Some desert biomes, some are wetland biomes, the tundra is a biome, grasslands, things like that. What's unique about this biome, a lot of times people look at it and see that it's underwater and they think that it's a wasteland, but it's the exact opposite of that. 3/4 of Wisconsin's wildlife animals rely on wetlands. Wetlands like this also help to reduce flooding by our cities around this area. They also get rid of a lot of the pollutants that are in the water. What happens is when the water runoff from fields, from the cities, it comes down into these wetlands, and then like your mom or dad's coffee filters, they filter out all that bad stuff, and then all the pure water will go into our local streams and rivers. So some pretty cool stuff. And like I said, also there's a lot of wildlife that depend on this biome. What was really cool, as I was walking in, I saw all sorts of different animal tracks. I saw some turkey tracks. There's one right here, actually. You can see that. Maybe. Those are turkey tracks. Saw all sorts of deer tracks coming back here. Saw some raccoon tracks. And it was pretty cool. As I was walking in, there were, if I had to guess, I would say about 6 deer that were bedded back in here. And as I got close to them, they all spooked and they ran back deeper into the swamp. And that's a survival adaptation that they have learned. A lot of times people will think that no way would a deer want to bed back in here. It's all wet. That's true to a certain extent. They don't actually bed in the water. They like to find certain islands, kind of like this, where there's no water, and they surround themselves with water so they can hear predators, kind of like me, sneaking up on them, so they can get a head start. And then when they run from the predators, they like to be surrounded by water, because deer will actually use that to run through. They have long legs that like a fox or a coyote or something wouldn't be able to go through this deep of water. So they'll run back deeper into the swamp, and that's exactly what they did. They ran further that way when I spooked them up. So some pretty cool stuff. Another thing that we'll talk about, a lot of times you hear people refer to these biomes as swamps, marshes, there are bogs, fens. Those are all the 4 main types of wetland areas. And sometimes they can be used interchangeably. For example, a swamp, by definition, is where the ground is saturated long enough, and the plants that live in there are typically your hardwood, woody looking plants like these big trees right here. So by definition, we would probably categorize this area as a swamp. When I walked in, there's just this big wide open area of grass, and even further back towards the river, the Manitowoc River, that way there'll be just grassy area, and that by definition would be your marsh. Typically you do not find any of the bigger trees, the woody trees, in that area. So some interesting things to learn back here in these wetlands. You got to be careful walking back here. I have my waders on so I can go up to here in the water. What's really cool about a wetland area is any time of year that you come back here, the landscape's going to be totally different. Right now we're kind of into that late winter, early spring, and actually today is the first day of spring, so happy spring to you all. this time of year, the snow is starting to melt, the water starting to accumulate, the water starting to rise. But once we get into the spring, this water level will get super high. Some of these trees, you can't really see here, but let me break through here. Some of these trees, you'll see water lines all the way up to here, sometimes even up to here when the water gets high enough. And this area is pretty high, so the water won't get that high, but a lot of times that water, when the snow melts, will get up to the tree this high. So this landscape will be underwater at some point in the year. And then during summer, when we get the dry months, the water will recede and it'll go downriver, and it'll be pretty dry back here where you can pretty much walk anywhere you want. Then obviously in winter, everything's frozen back here and you can walk wherever you'd like to. But one thing that's interesting too, I've been back here in winter, and on super cold days, you'll walk back here and everything's frozen for the most part, but you'll find pockets that are there's still water back here, and it's kind of strange. Why would that not freeze over? And the reason why is there's when we learned about in science, when the plants and animals, when they die, they decompose and they go underground and they release methane gas, which comes to the surface and kind of heats up the ground around it. So pop quiz, does anybody remember the name of that material? Remember when we looked at all the different types of soils? Within those soils we found different types of rocks, we found leaves, things like that. Does anybody remember the name of the dark material that when we had it in our vials that it floated to the top? Anybody remember? Humus. Okay, that's what the name of that is, and that's what makes this ground. If you dig up the dirt around here, it'll be that dark, rich soil. And again, these plants and animals around this area have adapted to live back here. If you were to just plant any tree or plant back here, it wouldn't survive because it's getting too much water. But all these trees over the years have adapted to living in this biome. So some pretty cool stuff that you can learn just by walking around back in here. And I know a lot of you probably are missing my dad jokes that we call them in 4th grade. So I have a couple related to this biome for you. All right, so our first one. What did the swamp say to the what did the swamp say to the marsh as it was leaving? Bayou. And a bayou is typically a swamp area that is in the south. Okay, so you probably didn't get that one. That was another crickets. I can hear the crickets in the background. No one's laughing, just like in the classroom. So I have another one though. This one you might like. To think of it though, so I don't ruin my punchline like I usually do. So, what is the best sweet treat that you can eat if you are back here in this wetland biome and you're feeling anxious or stressed? A marshmallow. Do you get it? The marshmallow. That's good. Yeah, I know you missed those jokes, 4th graders. So, I'll try to be uploading some more videos to our Google Classroom. I'll probably upload this to our YouTube page that I just created, and then I'll upload these to the Google Classroom. If you have any questions or comments about this type of wetland biome, feel free to comment below. Other than that, I don't have a lot for you. Oh yeah, I wanted to tie in some of our social studies. I know we are learning a lot about Wisconsin history. That's what we learn in 4th grade. So I did a little bit of research, and this Brilliant Wildlife Area actually covers 4,800 acres. And back in the 1876, Wisconsin started setting aside a lot of this land because they knew that we had to preserve it. Because like we learned in social studies, as the French settlers came to Wisconsin, Our first one, if you remember, was Jean Nicolet, who has a national forest named after him in northern Wisconsin. They use this land for primarily just for trapping for fur. But then later, as the population began to increase in Wisconsin, people started using this land for lumber, and then they clear cut all of the land for the most part. And people realized that the trees were not growing back fast enough as they were cutting them down. So people started to realize that they needed to preserve a lot of this land. And now in Wisconsin, if you drive down local highways, you'll see that it's clear cut. And what do we use that land for now? Most of the land was then used for farming. We're a big agricultural area. That's something that we've also been learning in social studies. But I learned that in Wisconsin, they set aside, there's about 200 other wildlife areas like this, like the Brilliant Wildlife Area. So some pretty cool stuff that we're doing to preserve this landscape. Because like we said, people were clear cutting this, cutting it down to build cities around, to reroute. They didn't like that it was flooding, so they would dig out channels to drain these swamps. And that's not good for our wildlife, because like we just talked about, 3/4 of our animals in Wisconsin rely on these wetlands. So we have to preserve those. So that's really all I have for you today. I hope everyone's staying healthy. And again, these are some tough times. Some of you might be feeling anxious. Maybe you're getting bored sitting at home, but try every day, try to do something different. Don't just sit there and watch TV, play video games. Stay active. Learn something new every day. Like I did. I looked online. I wanted to learn more about the wetland biome before I came out here. I come out to these woods all the time, and I wanted to learn more about them. I wanted to know the history about them. So you too, every day, set some time for social studies, science. Try to learn something about our local history, about our local biomes, things like that, animals, plants. There are so many different types of animals and plants that when I come walking in here, I wonder what they are, so I look them up online. You learn something new every day. And again, this time that we're in, it's something that I've never experienced, your parents probably never experienced. It's one of those that you right now are going to be a part of our local history. It'll be part of our national history. This will probably be in history books that students 50 years from now will probably be learning about. So as scary as it is right now, we have to embrace the time that we're in, and we have to look at the positives. We always talk about our growth mindset versus our fixed mindset. If we have a fixed mindset, we could complain and say how boring this is, having to be in our homes and not be able to interact with our friends and family. Or we could have a growth mindset and take this as an opportunity to become more of a problem solver, to take things upon yourself and learn with your family, like moms and dads being your teachers, versus coming to school and actually having those typical classroom setting. We always talk about how we always want to find the bright light in everything that we do. So again, try to stay positive. Keep practicing those math facts, multiplication, division facts. Read every day. Read at least 20 minutes a day. I look forward to hearing about all the stories that you read. I know you at least took home 5 library books, so hopefully we're making some progress on those, finding some new things. I want to hear all about what you've done as you being in charge of your learning versus me making our lesson plans and things like that. So as we go on, you may see me upload some things to Google Classroom, but we're not exactly sure what we're doing yet. So we'll stay in touch. So stay safe, stay healthy. We'll see you later.